My name is Mary Faulkner, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Duluth, as well as a trained and certified League of Women Voters moderator. I have the pleasure of moderating this forum. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Duluth, I would like to welcome everybody. The League of Women Voters is pleased to present this General Issues Forum for St. Louis County Sheriff. Thank you, candidates, for your willingness to participate in county government and this forum. This forum will be presented on PACT-TV and linked to the LWV Duluth website. Feel free to share the forum with others. The League of Women Voters believes that an informed citizenry is the foundation of effective democracy. The League is open to membership for men and women who are interested in nonpartisan civic participation. The League of Women Voters of Duluth realizes that creative and innovative policies and practices are forged out of diverse points of view. We believe diverse perspectives are necessary for responsible and representative decision-making. Let us pause to acknowledge our commitment to welcome and facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion in all aspects of our work. We strive to include people from a mix of abilities and backgrounds in all of our activities. And you are welcome to join us. For more information, check our website at www.lwvduluth.org. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that works at the local, state, and national level to encourage citizens to participate in government. While we, as a league, do study and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support particular political parties or candidates. The views expressed at this forum are those of the participating candidates, and not those of the League of Women Voters of Duluth. Additionally, LWV sponsorship of this forum is not a league endorsement of any of the particular candidates participating. Please remember to exercise your right to vote in the primary on Tuesday, August 9th. At this time, I would like to introduce the candidates: Jason Lakowski, Gordon Ramsey, and Chad Walsh. Our forum will begin with the candidates giving a 2-minute opening statement, followed by a questioning round. Questions have been vetted by LWV of Duluth committees. Candidates were not given the questions in advance. Each candidate will be given up to 1.5 minutes in which to provide their response. The questioning round has been set up so that each candidate will be asked questions in a rotating order. The order in which the candidates will respond was determined at random, and we will rotate the responses throughout the forum. After the questioning round is complete, each candidate will be allowed a 2-minute closing statement prior to the end of the forum. The candidates will now provide their prepared opening statement, and we'll begin with candidate Lakowski.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Duluth for this opportunity. My name is Jason Lakowski. I'm currently the undersheriff for the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office, second in command to Ross Littman. I've worked for the Sheriff's Office for 24 years, and during my tenure have achieved every promotable rank within our organization, which is an investigator, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and a supervising deputy prior to my appointment as undersheriff. During my time with the Sheriff's Office, I've also supervised in or worked in every division. For us, that includes our St. Louis County Jail, our Communications Division, and our Law Enforcement and Court Services Divisions. I'm a lifelong St. Louis County resident, currently living in Friedenberg Township with my wife of 23 years, our 15-year-old son, and our 13-year-old daughter. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have candidate Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity today. My name is Chad Walsh, born and raised in Hermantown. Graduated from Hermantown High School, spent several years in the military as a military police officer. Left the military, was a cop in South Dakota. Moved back to Minnesota, met my wife, which we've been married for 11 years. We have 6 children together. We started 2 businesses. So I come into this with a well-rounded background, not only law enforcement, but a business background also. That is, I'm happy to say, I'm proud to say that I don't have 24 years in law enforcement, and I can still relate to the communities of St. Louis County. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Gordon Ramsey. I am a Duluth guy. Grew up in Duluth. Duluth's my hometown. Went to Duluth schools. Graduated from UMD St. Scholastica. Got my first police job at age 20 in Iron River, Wisconsin, while I was attending UMD. I have been married to my wife Tracy for 25 years. We have now a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and we live in Lester Park in Duluth. I have a lot of different experiences. Started in Iron River, which gave me really the flavor for the rest of my career on how I police, that small town feel where I get to know people and become friends with those that I serve. Worked in the Central Hillside when I came to Duluth. Worked there the majority of my time on the street, as well as a supervisor and area commander for downtown in the Central Hillside. And I made lifelong friends in the Hillside, many of which I still get invited to weddings and different events today. And I found that when you get to know the people that you serve, it's more rewarding and you have more success as a police officer. I went on to be the chief in Duluth from 2006 to 16. An opportunity came along in Wichita, Kansas to be the chief there. Wichita is about 400,000 people. And served there from 2016 until earlier this year. Learned a lot in Wichita, and the biggest thing that I learned was that St. Louis County is my home county, and we missed the Northwoods and everything that went along with it.
Thank you. Now we'll move to those questions solicited and submitted by the organizing committee. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond, and we will begin with Candidate Ramsey. What strengths and talents make you qualified for the role of sheriff?
Well, I think if you look at my experience and my track record of being a chief for 16 years and involved heavily in community policing, you'll see significant success. Many of the things that we've done over my time as chief in partnership with the community and good teams, we lowered crime in Duluth 14%, lowered serious crime in Duluth 14% from 2010 to 2016. Additionally, we built a large group of volunteers, the largest in the city's history, to help us keep our city safe. When you look at community involvement, one of the things that is important to me is that the leader of any organization, particularly in public service, is visible and is present. I've been on a number of boards throughout my lifetime in the city, and people know me and they know what I stand for. And the other thing is that there's no surprises with the guy who's been in police leadership for 22 years when I was first promoted as a sergeant. For me, policing is relational, and it's all about relationships and getting to know those that you serve and reaching out to those that maybe haven't had good experiences with the police in the past to build those relationships and show them who you are. And I'm passionate about the role that law enforcement plays in the community. In this day and age when we're seeing decrease in numbers, we need the best and brightest to join our departments, and we need to recruit and do our best to get the best and brightest in the doors.
Thank you. Candidate Walsh?
Yes, thank you. Strengths and talents. In law enforcement, we do build community relations. What I found is, over my last 19 months of talking with the citizens of St. Louis County and hearing what they have to say, there's a huge divide between law enforcement and the citizens. So what I want to do is I want to break this divide down, and it needs to happen. One of the biggest strengths that I have for this is I haven't been in law enforcement for 24 years and alienated in that career field. I bring this as a citizen and how I feel the people want to be heard. And they want somebody that will sit down with them and listen to what they have to say. And they're not getting that. They need a citizen like them, somebody that's well-rounded, somebody that understands what it's like to be a citizen or a community member in our local communities. And we don't have that. We need that. We need somebody who wants to listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lakowski?
My strengths solely and specifically revolve around my time with the Sheriff's Office. I've had the ability to watch Sheriff Ross Lippman for the last 20 years, come up under his tutelage, learn what my responsibilities are, both statutorily and locally, to our constituents or our citizens. I'm encouraging people to do their research. There is a vast difference between a sheriff's office and a police department. Three primary responsibilities that befall a sheriff statutorily: the St. Louis County Jail, or a common jail. 100 and some people employed up at that jail were responsible for the care and custody of the inmates at that facility. Another primary responsibility in most jurisdictions is the communication center. We operate a primary PSAP with over 50 some employees, servicing 180 user agencies within St. Louis County. Third is the area of emergency management. Typically, those responsibilities befall a fire department within a major municipality. In our agency, it falls under the Sheriff's Office. So those three areas make me qualified to be at this table to lead the deputies within our organization as your next sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Walsh. What improvements need to be made in emergency management?
Thank you. Improvements that need to be made, there are several improvements. As I've been listening to the community members all over this county and the emergency responders that respond to calls, we need to upgrade our 911 system. We need to upgrade the software that we use. Not only that, but we need to start including the people in what we do. That has never happened. You know, as a business owner, I own a couple businesses in St. Louis County. I understand what it's like to include the people in what we do. It's very important. We can sit up here all day long and talk about how many people are employed in the emergency services, but we need to get the citizens involved, and they want to be involved. They want to have a say in what we do in law enforcement, and we need to listen to them for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Yes. What improvements need to be made in emergency management?
I think first and foremost, we need more staff. Currently, Dewey Johnson, who does a tremendous job, and Josh Brinkman are the only two within our emergency management division. If we look at the climate changes of the last 8 years, we're seeing our disaster situations or our severe weather increase. I took over as supervising deputy in the 911 division in 2015. That supervising deputy also oversees emergency management. I think within my first 2 years, we had 4 emergency declarations. And one of it, which was the windstorm of 2018, where Duluth Lake Walk was demolished, for lack of a better term. With the increased flooding that we're seeing, it's clear that we need additional staffing and manpower to meet the needs of this large county. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey.
From my perspective, having been involved in emergency management a number of years and led through significant disasters and weather-related incidents, and what I'm hearing when I talk to communities is they want to see leadership at the Sheriff's Department before there's a disaster or an incident. They want to have the cell phones. They want to have the relationships before there's a problem. That is probably the biggest one. While Dewey does do a fantastic job, I think above Dewey, people want to know who's leading the county and the Sheriff's Department. What I hear is they don't. So what I've been telling the town boards and the different people that I've met with is that they will know me. They'll have my cell phone number. We will be on a first name basis before there's a crisis. There's also the issue that was mentioned about certain radio issues and paging issues that the fire departments are struggling with and would like to see changes. And again, they're not getting the response that they want from the Sheriff's Department as far as radio communications and paging goes. Those are the issues that I see from where I'm at right now.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll begin with candidate Ramsey. How do you see your role in family crisis situations?
Well, obviously, the mental health issues that we deal with, there is an extreme over-reliance on the criminal justice system and law enforcement to deal with. You know, we know at county jails here and across the country, about 40% of the people there have mental illness. The state of Minnesota lacks the proper funding to address these critical issues. And as a result, the criminal justice system is often the de facto mental health service provider. From my perspective, we got to make sure that our staff are trained on de-escalation tactics, that critical incident training is important. I think in 2012 in Duluth, we brought the Lake Superior critical incident training to our department and invited other departments in. We were a leader in that. We need to look at having officers liaison with specialized training with service providers to ensure that we're being responsive to care providers. When people get released from the jail, we need to ensure that they have that there's a reentry program for those that are suffering crisis, and that we're partnering with our housing advocacy agencies to ensure that they have a place to go and stabilization. These are things that I've worked on my entire career because I have seen this over-reliance on the police since the day I started, and it's only gotten worse as funding has been cut. So for me, we have to operate with a sense of urgency on dealing with the amount of mental health issues that our communities face across the county.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from candidate Walsh.
Yes, thank you. Family crisis relationships. Us as law enforcement, we need to be compassionate to the citizens of our communities and the issues that they have and the crises they have affecting them. And we don't have that, so we need to up our training just a little bit more. You know, and that starts at the top with the sheriff all the way down to all the local police departments and everybody that's involved in the emergency response system for a family crisis, whether that's domestic violence or what it might be. We need to show compassion and we need to follow through. Not only do we need to show up and be compassionate, but after the incident is done, we also need to make sure that we're following through on the help that everybody needs. Mental illness is a huge issue. I've been talking about it for the last year and a half. It is huge. It is broke. We need to fix it. And that starts with the sheriff starting that ball moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky?
I agree. We are a community partner. There are many entities that we engage or react to situations with on a daily basis, whether that's public health and human services, whether that's our mental health professionals, HDC, all of the providers collectively. And that's something that currently is ongoing right now, and we call it the Clarity Project within St. Louis County. It is a community effort. There does need to be focus on long-term care. We do need to focus on the reentry by our inmate population to reduce this recidivism. Mental health is a big factor. Law enforcement has been scrutinized nationwide in terms of our response to mental health. We are taking an active approach to our response tactics. We are utilizing core responders, mental health professionals who sometimes are able to de-escalate a situation prior to law enforcement involvement. There's a burden on our EMS, with the response to their calls. If we can get to a point where we are all collectively working together, some of these issues are going to be taken care of. Let's not forget the opioid substance abuse issues surrounding mental health as well. It's a complex situation. We are currently working on it, and it's going to take all of our efforts to help moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start again with you, candidate Lukovsky. How can the Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with other levels of government, help address racial and cultural divides in public safety?
That also is occurring right now. There was an initiative by St. Louis County to get involved in a diversity, equity, inclusion project. We did reach out, or county admin did reach out to an independent service provider to lead us through that process. As we move forward and train our staff to be aware of their interactions daily, that's one step towards eliminating these biases in the workplace. Creating a safe working environment is important for all. Having a work environment where people can feel free to express themselves is only going to help our end product as county government. We also need to continue working with our community service providers. Have those difficult conversations. Allow them to share their frustrations with us to make us better moving forward. There needs to be a change in terms of law enforcement response, and we can use them to guide us.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey?
For me, again, it's all about partnerships and being open with the community. We have done some great things as far as building relationships with those that historically have had distrust with the police. NAACP, when I was the chief here, when every year we would invite them in to look at the tickets and charges that youth had in the schools. We would redact the critical information so that the names weren't in there, but they would poke, prod, ask questions. Why was this ticket issued? And that was a great partnership. It was transparency. It let them see what we were doing, and it gave context to the numbers. For me, other ways that we've done it is we created an amnesty day for warrants. Driver's license issues continue to plague, particularly our poor and low-income neighborhoods. And when you can't drive, it's more difficult to get a job, maintain a job, and support your family. By allowing these amnesty days where people can come in and start making payments on their fines, it's a win-win for everybody. Law enforcement and corrections has to be a leader in that. We worked on a project with AJC to reduce incarceration for kids of color back 10, 15 years ago, and what we did was by putting together a matrix and some guidelines, we greatly reduced the number of African Americans that were lodged at AJC by 40%. And that was done in partnership with community, stakeholders, and again, it's those relationships that you have to work together to reduce and address these issues.
Thank you. Candidate Walsh?
Yes, can you read the question, please?
I can, yes. How can the Sheriff's Office, in collaboration with other levels of government, help address racial and cultural divides in public safety?
Thank you. Great question. So, all we see, and I come into this as an outsider. I haven't been in the establishment for 25 years. I come into this as an outsider and understanding how the communities are seeing this. Nobody at the top understands what it's like. They don't sit down, they don't listen to any of the community members on what they have to say or how they feel or how they're being treated by law enforcement. And we have great law enforcement in northern Minnesota. What we need is great leadership. Leadership that understands, that will sit down and listen to these communities, whether it's a communities of color or not, and understand what they're feeling and how they would like to be treated, just like everybody else, with the utmost respect. We don't have that. We don't have that at all. That system is broke. I can tell you right now, as the sheriff, as if I get elected as the sheriff, I will sit down and I will listen to these communities, understand what they are feeling and how they want to get it fixed. That's the first step. And we can create all these programs all day long and say we're using this group and we're using that group in government. But if you don't ever sit down and listen to them, it's not going to get fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start with you for the next question. What, if any, what changes, if any, do you think should be made in gun ownership and use laws?
Gun ownership. We have a lot of laws on the books right now for gun ownership. We need to educate the public. That is a huge breakdown right now. Gun ownership, people want to be responsible gun owners. And there are a lot of laws on the books that are not even enforced. We need to enforce the laws that we have on the books. But the other thing is, being in northern Minnesota, we are very fortunate up here. We have a lot of hunters and a lot of people that like to carry guns, and that is their right to do so. We need to train and we need to teach people responsible gun ownership. Now, there is a flip side to that, and that's the mental illness side. And that side is broken. It needs to be fixed when it comes to gun ownership. Thanks.
Thank you. Candidate Lukovsky.
Could you repeat that one more time just so I have the semantics?
Yeah. What changes, if any, do you think should be made in gun ownership and use laws?
So, as sheriff, I'm not aware of any statutory responsibility that allows me to change gun laws. I enforce the law. As sheriff, I'm not a member of the judicial branch, the executive branch, or the legislative branch. So, when policymakers and legislators decide on what laws are going to be made, I, as sheriff, will then enforce those laws. Excuse me. As a peace officer, we take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Minnesota. We'll enforce those laws where we can, and I agree. Education needs to occur, and perhaps education on family members, adults, parents. Why are kids getting your guns? I have guns. My children use guns. We're responsible. So that educational component needs to absolutely occur. And then when are we going to hold people accountable when they don't take their firearms possession seriously? Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey?
I think it's important that a sheriff can't sit on the sidelines of issues. And that while we're not elected to make laws, we do have a unique perspective on how to keep our community safe. And I think it's important we use that voice and share that with our elected officials. One issue that has come up time and time again that I heard from people for most of my career is they don't understand how federal licensed firearm dealer has to do a background check when someone buys a gun, but yet a street purchase doesn't. And I think the background portion needs some resolution. For me, though, safety programs are very important. Partnered with a lot of gun stores over my career on giving out locks where police and firearms sales, where we talk about safety and share important trends and tips with people to keep them safe are critical. And this is an issue, obviously, where we need leaders to bring people together. It's a very divisive issue. And I think a sheriff is in a unique position to help bring people together on this issue through their position.
Thank you. And we'll start the next question with you, Candidate Ramsey. How do you envision working with other law enforcement agencies?
For me, it's all about partnerships. And as I have been traveling throughout the county, again, the one thing I hear, particularly in the northern part of the county, is the relationship is good with the working deputies, but they do not see the administration. Many cases, they don't even know each other by face, administration and police departments with the sheriff's department. And for me, that is critical. We talked earlier about emergency management, how the leaders in communities want to know who is running the sheriff's department. And those relationships are critical before there's something bad that happens. So the visibility and getting out there and building relationships is important. And beyond just when there's a crisis. So there's ways to partner. You know, I look at, again, particularly the northern part of the county where there are significant drug issues. And someone needs to bring everybody together to focus more on the issues that are impacting the Iron Range with drugs and crime. And right now that's not happening. And that's one thing that needs to change.
Thank you. Candidate Walsh?
Yes, thank you. So as I come into this as an outsider, not only a law enforcement officer, but a business owner, I have spent a lot of time all over St. Louis County listening to what the people, the community members, the law enforcement agencies, the fire departments, the EMS, and what they've all been saying and what they want. I can tell you right now, I walk into police departments up in the northern part of St. Louis County, and they say to me, "Who's the sheriff now?" After 20 years, nobody knows who the sheriff is. They have a great working relationship with the deputies up there, but they don't have a clue who the administration is. And what do I hear, Chad? We want to be part of the Sheriff's Department. And I say, I listen to you, I hear you, I understand. The Sheriff's Department belongs to the people, not only the law enforcement officers, but the people of the communities. And the law enforcement departments up on the northern part and the southern part, they want to be part of it. They want us to have a say in how we do law enforcement. There is no relationship right now with the Sheriff's Department and other law enforcement administrations north of Cotton. It is very, very frustrating. The people up north, they want to have a voice. They want to have a say in what we do. They want to feel like they're part of St. Louis County. And it's all over, right down from the fire departments to the EMS. It is all the same. We shouldn't be sitting here after 20 years saying this. As an outsider, I come into this, I hear you, I understand you, and I will make the change for you. We will have relationships all over St. Louis County. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lakowski?
I guess I'd like to start out by saying the 280 employees that work for the St. Louis County Sheriff's Office do a tremendous job on a daily basis. There are things that are happening in St. Louis County. There are relationships that have been established. In our northern portions, they're right in the fact that perhaps administration hasn't been up there. I look to change that. I have solid working relationships down south. I have solid working relationships up north, and our command staff has already made this a priority. I don't need to become sheriff to make this a priority. We are already doing it. It does take communication. What we also need to understand is that these police departments have their own autonomy as well. And the sheriff just can't roll into town and dictate what's going to happen in these municipalities. Candidate Ramsey is right. You need to communicate with the town board, the mayors, and all of that. But we do good work. There is room for an improvement. We're already working on it. And I don't think the picture is as bleak as is being laid out. And I want to make that statement on behalf of my staff.
Thank you. And we'll start with you for the next question. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the department's workforce and policies in terms of diversity?
Strengths, we have a very talented group of people. You know, we have employees that are tenured 20 years, and we have brand new ones. There's a broad range of talent. We are increasingly seeing our staff embrace technology. And that's encouraging as we move forward. It is one of my priorities to continue leveraging technology for the safety of our deputies. In terms of diversity, that has been something that's come up as a result of our involvement with our DEI project. We need to do better recruiting people of color, BIPOC. We do not have good representation of numbers. We're seeing minimal applicants in our hiring processes, and that certainly needs to be addressed. As we identify the reasons for this, we can move forward and target those employees who will make this a more rounded, better organization.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey.
Could you repeat the question too for me? Thanks.
Yes. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the department's workforce and policies in terms of diversity?
Well, I think you hear it from the community, and as mentioned, there is a recognition that it needs to improve. While there are tremendous employees at the Sheriff's Department, this is an area where leadership needs to come in and change the way things are done. In Wichita, we increased the number of women in 5 years from under 12% to almost 17%. We greatly increased the people of color on the department significantly. The department looks different today than it did 6 years ago. And it can be done. It takes work, and it takes putting the right team together to ensure that you are focused and have a strategic recruiting plan that focuses on getting the best, brightest candidates in the door. For me, it is our communities are begging for it. We are in a crisis with trying to get people in the door into public safety, whether it be 911 here, whether it be corrections, or whether it be law enforcement. It is a crisis, and it needs to be a priority of the next sheriff to figure this out, to ensure that when you or your families or loved ones call 911, that the best person is there answering the phone, that the best person is responding to your call. And it starts with leadership and planning and getting the right team in place.
Thank you. Candidate Walsh?
Yes, thank you. So, as I said before, I spent a lot of time listening to the communities and law enforcement and EMS and fire departments all over through St. Louis County. And I'm going to tell you right now, the Sheriff's Department does a great job, but the administration falls short. After several years, let's just say after 24 years, I find it kind of funny that when I drive around St. Louis County and I talk to all the departments, that they don't have a clue who administration is. Well, the deputies on the street, the 911, the jail, they're doing a phenomenal job. They do it every day. It's great. You know, the administration needs to back the folks, the boots on the ground. They really do. And there's a big breakdown there. If you want to get good people to come work for you, they need to know that you appreciate them, that you will stand up for them, that you will have their back at the end of the day. That is a huge deal. Weaknesses, communication. I can't say it loud enough. We don't tell the communities what's going on in their area, and we need to. That needs to happen. You know, that needs to happen. The deputies, the 911, the jail, like I said, they all do a great job. But the communities, they don't know who these folks are, and they would like to. And we need to open up that line of communication. It needs to happen. And it shouldn't take an outsider to come in and have to point this out. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll start with you for the next question. It's a long one, so
great.
Bear with me. The majority of Minnesota gun deaths are suicide. The majority of suicide victims are teens and older rural white men. Keeping guns safely stored, unloaded, has shown some promise in preventing some of these suicides. What would you do as sheriff to support and or develop programs to encourage safe storage of firearms?
Thank you. That is a great question. As we've heard, the sheriff does not make laws, but the sheriff can help the communities out tremendously. The storage of firearms is a huge thing. You know, I have the privilege of meeting with people every day and also teaching the Minnesota Permit to Carry, and we talk about firearm storage, not only for hunter safety, which I teach also. You know, we talk about firearm storage, and a lot of people, they don't understand how to correctly store their firearms, so we have to go through it. Education is a huge thing. We need to educate the public. There's a huge breakdown between law enforcement and the public, especially when it comes to education. The public looks at us as professionals in this career field, and they would love to hear from us on what we think and when it comes to storage of firearms and how we can listen when people have problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lakowski.
Excuse me. Education again is integral in trying to solve part of what we're dealing with, but it is a two-pronged approach. You also have the mental health aspect of it. As sheriff, you can certainly partner with your public health and human service partners to tackle one side of it in terms of mental health. In terms of the educational component, do we piggyback on our gun owners, our firearms sellers, to leverage funding to initiate a campaign that would teach or allow for the responsible gun ownership. Many avenues to go. There's certainly a willingness there on the staff's part to engage themselves with the community to make sure that our citizens, our constituents are heard. And as we continue revamping our command staff, those are priorities that we will establish. A dynasty is over, 20 years. We've had 6 of our 11 command staff members in the sheriff's office turn over at the administrative level. There is a new focus already in place to address deficiencies that are already known, and there is brainstorming to bring this organization into the future.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey.
Well, having been involved with and on calls and accidental shootings involving youth, this is a big issue. But really, what I think when I look over my years on the job is we have seen an increase in suicides in Duluth and in St. Louis County. There is mental health is a big issue, and that is what is driving a lot of these suicides. The education is important. As I mentioned earlier, the state is not funding mental health resources like they should. In Duluth, we embedded a social worker inside the department to look at suicide calls and to try and intervene more quickly to ensure that we can get people resources and stabilized before they potentially harm themselves. That was a partnership that was done with the county board. The education piece is important on safe storage, partnering with other groups for locks. It's sad to see accidental shootings because guns aren't locked, and I don't think you hear many arguments from anybody on the importance of ensuring that guns are stored safely away from kids so that they don't get hurt. And those are the areas that we can all agree on and focus on and create that education, as others mentioned, that is critical to keeping people safe.
Thank you. And we'll start with you. This will be our last question before we move on to closing statements. So, Candidate Ramsey, what changes do you anticipate in the coming years that will impact public safety and the various functions that fall under the Sheriff's Office?
For me, again, it involves relationships, that people have trust in their law enforcement. I think our county law enforcement is doing a great job at the street level. However, I think that as technology changes and society changes, the over-reliance on the criminal justice system for mental health is probably one of the biggest issues, and chemical dependency facing us today. When someone wants to get treatment right now for chemical dependency, they simply can't walk in and get it. And thus, oftentimes, because of the cycles of chemical dependency, they often resort to crime. And it becomes this cycle that we've got to stop. And resources have to be put into it, because right now we're putting it into the criminal justice system. And it's going to take strong leadership to work with other partners and change this way. When people talk about the over-reliance on us to address these issues, it's true. And it's true because there's no one else to answer that 3-digit number at midnight when someone is in crisis and suffering, and thus the police go and it enters that world of the criminal justice system. And we need to talk about it, and we need to ensure that there's other avenues for people that are in crisis, and that police are not continually put in these positions to address these societal issues that are facing our communities.
Thank you. Candidate Walsh.
Yes, can you read the question, please?
I can. What changes do you anticipate in the coming years that will impact public safety and the various functions that fall under the Sheriff's Office?
Well, I can tell you, if I get elected, some of the changes that will be made in St. Louis County is we will sit down with all of our communities and all of our citizens of this community and listen to what they have to say and what their problems are. And yes, mental illness is a big one, but there are a lot of concerns and a lot of issues, and they're all different. They're not the same. All over the county, the issues and the concerns are all different. But we, as law enforcement, need to take the time. We need to understand what the communities want and how to fix these problems. We can't fix them all. We need the help of the communities, and we need to ask them for their help. That needs to happen. We can sit up here and say, 20 years, it's been the same. It should have never been the same. We should listen to our communities a long time ago, and it needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lakowski.
Some of the changes that I see potentially coming revolve around police legislation. There are a number of initiatives out there that are concerning to me in terms of taking resources from the men and women that protect our county. You start eliminating some of them specialty resources, and I don't see that going the best for recruitment and retention. Mental health, I agree. I think we all agree mental health is a hotbed topic. It's something we can't be reactive to. We need to be progressive in. We need to continue our partnerships with our local community members and focus on that long-term care to ensure that, again, police, fire, EMS, our emergency service providers are not burdened by some of the calls that they're required to go to now. This also does have an ultimate effect on our correctional institution as well. As sheriff, you're responsible for the common jail. We routinely monitor numbers, which fluctuate drastically. We need to find other partnerships that allow for this care and not allow the jail to be a place where we just shove people and not give them the attention they need. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will ask each candidate to give a 2-minute closing statement. We will start with candidate Lukovsky.
Again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Duluth for this opportunity. I'd like to thank the voters who will do their research into the qualities necessary for this upcoming election, August 9th. I would humbly submit that my diverse experience with the Sheriff's Office sets me aside from the other candidates. We are all peace officers. We are all brothers in that sense. And it's up to people to do their research, not only specific Sheriff's Office responsibilities, but also experience throughout the course of a career. When we talk about leadership and my promotions throughout my career, I've led at every level. The endorsements that I have suggest that I've created strong partnerships. I look forward to continuing that with my team that's already set. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Ramsey?
One area we didn't get to discuss much is crime. And while it's not a concern everywhere, in many communities it is a big concern. And as I talk with law enforcement, community leaders, business people, residents, one of the frustrations is there is a policy right now at the jail where misdemeanors can't be brought in. Across this county, law enforcement is begging for that policy to be changed. I think it's hurt downtowns from Duluth to the Iron Range because our police officers can't bring misdemeanors in. Someone who policed in this city, I think it really hinders our ability to hold offenders accountable, and it ultimately hurts our community. That rule needs to change immediately. The other thing is that, I'll tell you what, we talk about doing research. I'm an open book, been doing this almost 30 years. My successes are evident, my track record is clear. How I will be as a sheriff is all written out. I've been an accessible chief. We've made substantial improvements. We lowered crime, we built partnerships, and we did great things. And with that, I ask for people's support, and I want to thank the League also for hosting this event as well today.
Thank you. And Candidate Walsh?
Yes, thank you. So, we are all law enforcement officers. Being a good sheriff is not just about experience. It is about understanding our communities. It is about building the relationships with the citizens of our communities and listening to what they want. It's about the people. A good sheriff not only can lead a department for the communities, but will sit down, will be compassionate, will understand what the citizens in the communities would like to have out of their law enforcement. And as sheriff, I tell you right now, I will sit down and I will listen to what they have to say. It needs to happen. It shouldn't take an outsider to come in like me to have to change this, but it needs to be done. And I need to lead the way to do it. Law enforcement has done a great job, but it is time. It is time that somebody sits down with everybody and listens to what they have to say. and we can build those relationships all the way through St. Louis County and take St. Louis County to a whole new level. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the candidate forum for the office of St. Louis County Sheriff. It is our purpose in sponsoring events such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear from candidates to discuss the issues that are important to you. There is never enough time to cover all of the issues in such a limited setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, you should feel free to contact the candidates directly. We hope this program has helped you learn more about the candidates and issues so that you can make informed choices at the polls on Tuesday, August 9th. We thank the candidates, PACT-TV, and you for making this event possible. PACT-TV will carry this forum and others. Check their listing for a schedule of times.